personally belong to a family who migrated as a refugee from Pakistani Punjab.
So the diaspora does not give funds alone, but it also provides ideas, skills, and knowledge for developmental activities.
The internal migrant labor force in Europe that actually facilitated an industrial revolution.
The Sri Lankan Tamil diaspora has an identity of being a Tamil and being a Sri Lankan.
The links between education and mobility in the context of a very strong culture of migration.
UAE is the largest destination of Indian diaspora, followed by the United States of America.
Gulf outside Kerala has created a Gulf within Kerala itself.
Work from home is not for the migrant workers. They have to go outside and they have to work. So my topic is on state migrant rights. Before that, I would like to just put certain light on the evolving diasporas. Evolving diasporas are like the presently the situation that has happened in today's world, how people are moving from one place to another, not only in India but around the people who are settling around the world, and how they have created a diasporic communities. And because of this ongoing pandemic, the pandemic that has not yet over, it's people who are over here and who are growing up, the diasporic communities, who are in a panic to move from one place to another place in search of livelihood. So this is what the evolving diasporas have already mentioned, and we have I have been participating in the paper presentation for the last 5 days, and it has been quite they have covered each and everything. It's really wonderful to be a part of this. So my topic is on state migrants and the rights. So when I am talking about the migrant, who is a migrant? So when we are talking about the migrant workers, the migrant are the people, or the people who move from one place to another place, which we have already read in all the students might have read about this, that what is all about migration. So migration means when people move from one place to another place, basically in search of livelihood. Livelihood is the major concern for migrating. And besides that, there are many other causes that we associate with, like that may be economic, that may be political, that may be environmental, that may be social, that may be many ways through which, because of which people migrate. But migration has reflected a multicultural society, or we can say, a society which is composed of numerous number of people, and who hold a predominant feature in this age of globalization, and who are the prime aspect or the prime concern, which was the topic of discussion in this particular year, the 2020, which was all about the migration, which was all about the diasporic communities, and who have come here and who have tried to, that is what is everybody's attention was the migrant workers, because that was not looked down for so many years ago. People never looked at the migrant people. There was discussion, but the way we should have discussed, the way we should have talked about them, that was missing somewhere or the other way. So here, my topic of discussion is state migrants and the rights. So when we are analyzing about state migrants and the rights, migrants do have got certain rights, the rights that are required, the rights that are needed, the rights that are necessary. So unless and until those rights are given to them, we already know that rights are there, because all our Constitution of India prescribes certain rights, that all persons, regardless of their nationality, race, legal or other status, are abided by certain fundamental rights. And those rights are considered as the human rights. And those rights are quite obligatory for the migrant workers also. Migrant workers, despite of living in any state, any around over the globe, they have got certain rights. If we go and see the Human Rights Charter, we will be coming across and seeing that human rights are like they have to get equal pay for work, equal freedom from forced labor, freedom from atrocity, freedom from many forms of illegalities. So this is what are their rights, and their rights were not implemented. at some moment of time or other moment of time, or their subject was not a focus of discussion. But this COVID pandemic has brought to light their rights, their aspect, their purview, their conditions, their plights, and their predicaments. So these were some of the things that came into limelight because of this COVID pandemic. So when we talk about the our state, it may be India, it may be any other country, wherever we go, everybody has got certain rights, specifically the migrant workers. So when we talk about this labor rights in India, our constitution of article promotes and guarantees that everyone has the right to reside and settle anywhere in any part of India, irrespective of whatever nationality they are, whatever community they are, they have to reside. So state is a hub for the migrants where they reside when they come from different places. So when we are focusing on the state rights of the migrant workers, let us first discuss what are the causes. Why do people migrate, or what is the reason behind their migration? So people migrate because it may be certain livelihood concern, and the pandemic situation has thrown light to the livelihood situation that was operating, the livelihood that was at stake, the livelihood that was, social distancing is a privilege, because it's not for the migrant workers, but it is for all the other people. The migrant workers, it's not a privilege for them, because they cannot stay back, they cannot stay for 20 days, 30 days at home, or 15 days. They can buy the grocery and they can stay at home and work. They cannot do work from home. Is not for the migrant workers. They have to go outside and they have to work. So there were certain issues, there were certain causes that led the migrant workers to work outside, and that was the reason where state had to implement certain measures, or state had to do certain tasks to increase their livelihood, to uplift their livelihood. So there have been certain statistics that we see, according to the International Labour Organization, that 150 million people live temporarily or permanently outside the countries of origin, of which 80 to 97 million are estimated to be the migrant workers and the members of their family. And in many countries, these human rights norms were quite prominent, that how migrant workers were working and how they were facing all these trials and tribulations from time to time. So addressing the human right dimension to these experience of migrant, where we come across that there were 150 million of the world's people, where we can say 1 in every 50 human beings living outside their country of origin, that may be the refugee, that may be the migrants, or that may be the permanent migrants, is an important feature or an important aspect of the migrant syndrome or the migrant situation. So when we are talking about this migrant situation or the migrant plight, when they remain in the state, what we encounter is that the state was not ready. The state was not ready, or there was a lack of preparedness, because we have prepared for disaster, we had prepared for natural calamities, but some way or the other way we have not prepared for the migrant plights. We were not prepared that what could we do for the migrant laborers, or what could we do for their situation, how to increase their situation. It was quite sudden. The lockdown that happened in the country, the lockdown that changed the scenario of the country, was quite sudden. And this may be a privilege for much of the people, but that was not a privilege for majority of people, especially the migrants. So when we are talking about this migrant plight or the migrant situation, by remaining in the state, there were many atrocities because of the COVID time. If we analyze pre-COVID era, if we go back to the pre-COVID era, and if we analyze the atrocities, the problems that these migrant people were encountering, it was quite numerous. Nobody looked into that. But after the COVID started, after the COVID happened in our country, people started thinking about that what is the situation, how it is happening. And there were many people who were victims of child marriage, domestic violence. There was trafficking of these migrant workers. There were many numerous cases that came into limelight because of this. Because if we go back and read the newspapers back to some era, and back to, like, last year, if you go back and see, you will be coming across that how many migrant workers were tortured, were facing discrimination, and there were some hidden causes that they were encountering, hidden problems that they were facing because of this COVID pandemic. So, what did this pandemic do? It just brought the scenario of people, how far they were neglected, how far they were looked upon, how far they were noticed. So, that was the thing that was looked in this particular notion of pandemic, about the plight of the migrant in a state, in a particular state, when we are talking about India. But if we compare to the other states, other diasporic communities in different parts of the world, we will also encounter some way or the other way. It was quite sudden for everyone, but it was not a privilege for the migrant workers, because they don't have the opportunity for social distancing. They don't have the opportunity for sitting in a particular place and living like we work from home. That is not a privilege for them. So that was the thing, that was the notion that was quite neglected, and that is the reason why they had to encounter all these things. So this was a kind of analysis that we could talk about this state, migrants and their rights, and how far their rights were affected. So, but before this, I would just like to say, as we all, we should give a sociological perspective to this particular notion of migration. So, I could just say there was a book by George Simmel, The Stranger. So, I think many of the students community who are here, who are patiently listening, they might have read that book that is called The Stranger by George Simmel. So, George Simmel, a very renowned sociologist, who has explained about a stranger, a person who usually goes and moves from one place to another place, and how he resides in a particular populace, and how the person is having or acquiring a particular inhabitation in a place where they live. So this was the start or the point from which this migration studies, or this sociology of migration, was talked about, or the discussion was going on from that particular notion only. So we could just reflect in that book, where he speaks about that how a person comes, inhabits a particular area in search of livelihood, and how the population changes. So this is one of the pioneering, or one of the preliminary historical trajectories that you could see if you go through the George Simmel book on The Stranger. So there were many aspects that have described migration from time to time. Migration was an ongoing phenomena, and migration determines the sign of progress, the sign of development, where people move. Why do people move? It may be because of war. What we say, that people move because of war, or because of livelihood issue, because they want to strive for more better things. That is the reason they want to move. So migration is necessary. Migration is necessary, and migration and migratory rights of the migrants are also that much necessary to be given. So the theories, I think we have all of the students of migratory and diaspora studies have already known about the theories. Like, there are many theories, like Revenstein's theory on migration, neoclassical theories on migration. There were many theories on migration that has always promoted, that has always talked about the kind of movement, the kind of movement that people do. People go because of the push and the pull factors. Maybe there are some factors that pushes them from their place of origin. They go to the place of destination, and there are many evolving theories from time to time that has come. So migration has been a significant part of human history, as it has shaped societies and the economy due to the intermixing of different cultures. Movement of economic and financial purposes has gained immense popularity over the past many decades, if we see. And millions of people travel, and they travel from one place to another in search of livelihood. So if we go and see another study that is by International Labour Organization, which estimates that there are 20 to 90 million domestic workers in India. If we take an average of 2 and assume that at least half are migrants, and that estimate roughly of 27.2 million. So migrant workers are everywhere. Wherever you go, you come across migrant. They may be in a brick kiln factories, they may be a street vendor, they may be a rickshaw puller, they may be anyone, because half of the population, or you can say full of the, everywhere we can say that people come from their area of origin and they settle over some area of destination. It is because of livelihood or a chance of some particular thing that they want in their life. That is the reason they migrate. But here we are focusing on the rights of the migrants, the rights that are hampered, the rights that were not looked upon. If we see, there are many laws that our constitution has implemented. If we go back to the French Revolution, the social security, which it has talked about. If we go to the many phases of time, how constitution has changed, and this the time has changed, and how situations are changing. And we have many laws like the Interstate Migrant Workmen Act, the Payment Equal Remuneration Act, the labor laws, the Unorganized Workers Social Security Act. There are many things that have been implemented from time to time. But the situation rights lays here is that why was that particular right not implemented during the pandemic? Where those things have gone? Where was the thing? Because if you see some of the case studies, you will be coming across. There was a case study from Bihar, a migrant worker who was responsible for a family of 5, and he was stranded outside, and stranded and lived over there. And what happened? We all know that what was the situation, what was the plight, how they were bleached. Some migrant workers were bleached, some were thrown, some have committed suicide, or somebody have died because of an insecure future. So that is how that has affected their well-being. That has been a threat to their well-being. So these are some of the things, or some of the real things that we have observed in these pandemic times. And if we are feeling so disheartened, or if we are feeling so bad for them, then how far they might be feeling. Their situation might be so troublesome, so different. So when we say about this migrant worker, a woman migrant worker, because migrant worker, when we are talking about, we are not talking about only the men, but it constitutes of women, it constitutes of children, it constitutes of old people. So these people who are here, they constitute the migrant whole, the migrant composition. So when we say about this migrant workers plight, or we say about this women were always there in the migrant stream, but somehow they were not mentioned some way or other way, because usually migration was for when the husband goes, the woman also goes as a wife. So somehow or other way, the work, the plight, the scenario, the constitution, or the perspective of a woman is somehow missing in the migrant labor force. But there were many women who were affected. If we see, there was a pregnant woman who gave birth to the child on the streets, that we have seen because of lack of a particular way through which they could go to the hospital, or they could go somewhere and they could grievance their things. So that is the thing which was encountered, which was reflected during these pandemic times. And not only these, there were many violence that was taking place during that moment of time. So we have many case studies and many things that have been operating, or that was taking place. But what happened in this particular procedure? It was not only a social issue, or a political issue, or an economic issue, but it was a threat to their mental well-being, where their social well-being was affected. So when we define a social well-being, we say that when a person is okay, some way or other way, the person is okay in some sense. But what happened? Their entire plight was getting affected. They were mentally harassed, they were mentally molested, they were not able to take any decisions, what they will do. Some people are at home, some people are separated. They don't have any options. And that is how that was a threat to their mental well-being. So despite we have many boards, many things, like in Punjab, I think is the first state in the country in 2010, there was a migrant welfare board that was established, and that was trying to curb the needs of the migrant workers. So this was one of the steps that was taking place. And even we could say the social media, the Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp was, that was quite active during that process, which brought to us all these facts, and we came to know that what was the situation, and what how people were suffering from all these plight. So the migrant policies. So let me just talk about, this is my last phase of discussion. So the migrant policies. So when we are talking about the migrant policies, the states of I think there's a IMPEX, the Interstate Migrant Policy Index. So the states of Kerala, Goa, Rajasthan, and Andhra Pradesh have been the most successful, which studies have come out in eradicating the migrant plight, or the migrant receiving states. And the IMPEX was a measure that seeks to measure the integration of these interstate migrants. So COVID-19 pandemic, while making the migrant workers visible, also has shown certain things that needs to be taken into account, that needs to be seen. Like we get prepared ourselves for a disaster, like the same way we should also get prepared ourselves for the pandemic. Is not only for the rich, it's also for the poor, it's also for the people who are in the lower ladders of the society. We should look up to them also. So and these were some of the studies, like the IMPEX index, that brought into the limelight that how far people were recovered, or they were rehabilitated from that particular notion. So here, just let me just say you, with this particular migratory movement, or with this post what we say neoliberalization era, or this particular thing, we come across that there are many questions to rethink. That is migration needed? Will people now go for migrating? Will people now travel? Will people leave their families and go? So that was an utter shock, that really people wants to go, or we are rethinking that will be migration there, because migration was a very important thing, is a key change for progress and development. So now people will think that should we really need to migrate now? Is it necessary to migrate? Is it required to migrate? So rethinking this migration syndrome, because now whatever has happened in this, there has been a reduction, like long distance migration in India, and many migrants who were stranded and who were composed of an important part in the economy, they feel that no, is it really required, that really required we need to go? Because the situation, the things that has happened, that may continue anytime, because everything is quite unpredictable. We never know how do we come to that particular situation, or how do we get rid of that particular situation. So what is here, we need certain social protection, social measures. Like in India, if we see that we have many reforms have been made because of this migratory thing, and this migrate, like the MG Naraga project, and we have many governmental public works that has been done from time to time. But still there has been a kind of syndrome, like a kind of xenophobia among the people. Like, see, if someone has traveled, because COVID has created a stigmatization among the masses, like people who have traveled from one place to another, people fear that this person might get a COVID. Like yesterday newspaper, when I read, I saw that COVID is returning back, COVID is coming. So we don't know what will happen next, but who will understand the plight of these migrant workers who have been tortured, and who have been victims of marginalization, vulnerability from time to time, and they have been facing a lot of problems. Then who will look at them, and how do we need to rethink the policies? And the first major thing is how we need to empower them. These are certain questions that we need to take into account. Like, how could we empower these migrant workers? The migrant workers may be anyone, maybe from any community, maybe anybody, but we need a kind of social security for them. What will they do when they are going to a different place, when they are going for livelihood only? It's only for their bread and butter that they are traveling. And how could they escape from that particular thing when the situation in front of them is unpredictable? And there are many things that people are also fearing to take vaccine. Is there a people feel that should we take vaccine? Is there a vaccine mobilization? There are many questions that comes into the limelight or comes into the spotlight that needs to be rethink. And the major step is that to how to empower them. The empowerment of the migrants, migrant populace, is very, very necessary. We need to empower them. We need to create a better place for them, so that they could live their life in a better way, so that they could travel, they could go. It's not only for women also, there should be certain safety measures. There should be certain protocols that should be followed in the post-COVID era, and the post-COVID era should look into all these dimensions that the COVID era has missed out. So these are some of the questions that needs to be taken into account, that needs to be solved, and this is all about that I want to say in today's topic. So thank you everyone for your patient listening.